You may have heard that love is like a drug, and there's a reason for that. It's because drugs like cocaine activate the same part of the brain that gets activated when you fall in love. And that is only part of the reason why we end up feeling addicted to toxic relationships and how we end up getting stuck in them. In this video, I want to cover 6 ways a narcissist keeps you stuck in a toxic relationship and how to get unstuck. And stay with me because number 6 really pulls it all together. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Common Ego community. My name is Christina. On this channel, we talk about emotional abuse, spirituality, and self-development. And if those topics interest you, or if you're interested in the topic of today's video, you might want to consider subscribing because that's exactly the type of content you'll find here. And don't forget to hit that bell icon so you can be notified whenever I post new content. So if you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, an emotionally abusive relationship, a toxic relationship, there's a good chance you felt stuck at one point or another. And that, I hate to say, is not an accident. What we're talking about here are manipulation tactics, and these are things that are done with some level of intention. And as I mentioned, the last one, number 6, really pulls it all together, and it really is the number 1 manipulation tool that narcissists rely on. They all use it, and it's highly effective. That's why they use it so often. Okay, so the first way that a narcissist keeps you stuck is through love bombing or idealization. So in this phase, this is usually the early phase of the relationship, the earliest phase of the relationship. But love bombing or idealization can come back around many times in a relationship with a narcissist. So this is when they go overboard. They go over the top to show you that they care about you, to show you that you're important to them, to make you feel like you're on top of the world. Now, the tricky thing here is if you're dealing with a true narcissist, they are actually idealizing you in this phase. So it's not outright manipulation, although the end result is exactly the same. Because if you have been with a narcissist, you know that love bombing does not last. It will never last. Something that intense really isn't made to last. Okay, so how does this keep you stuck? Well, if we go back to the analogy of drug addiction, they say that the first time somebody uses a drug, that is when they get the most intense high. It's the most intense because it's new and your body and your brain don't yet know how to handle the chemicals that are coming at it. And as the brain adjusts, it kind of turns down the volume. With an abusive person and love bombing, it's kind of similar. In the beginning, it's really intense. You might feel loved like you've never been loved before. You might feel like this is a soulmate connection, like this was truly meant to be. But the truth is, this idealization phase is arguably the most dangerous phase because this is when you get hooked. This is when your brain gets all those feel-good chemicals going. And this is the high that you end up searching for, but it never truly comes. Even when idealization comes back around, usually you'll find that it's more diluted than it was in the very beginning. So if you're feeling that, if you're feeling the hope that one day this love bombing, this idealization will come back around and stick, education on the topic can really help you. Once you learn about narcissism and how this is really all part of a relationship with a narcissist, it's easier to understand and to see whether it applies to your specific situation. If you feel like your relationship has followed that pattern of love bombing, devaluation, and discard, then there's a very, very good chance you are in a relationship with a narcissist. And it's not going to change. So holding out for that hope that that love bombing or that idealization is going to come back around it's false hope, and unfortunately, it's toxic hope. So the second way that a narcissist will keep you stuck is through future faking. And I have a whole video on future faking, so I'm not going to go deep into it. But I'll tell you that future faking is when somebody promises a future to you that they have no intention of delivering upon. So this often happens in couples with marriage or children or maybe a big move. It's something that this person knows you want, and they use it as a carrot to dangle in front of you. If you're getting frustrated and fed up, and the narcissist does not want you to walk away, they're not quite done with you yet. Or if they come back on a hoover, this is also very common. If they're hoovering you, if they're trying to get you back after they've discarded you, they'll come back dangling that carrot again. Oh, okay, well, this time it's going to be different, and this time you're going to get everything you've ever wanted. And the sad part is that if these are things that you really and truly do want, you want to believe it. You really want to believe this is true. And it can sound very sincere. But if this is something that's happening over and over again, if you're noticing this pattern in your relationship that just keeps repeating, it's really important to take a realistic view of what's happening here. If someone keeps saying the same thing but not taking action towards it, what they're doing is they're intentionally trying to keep you stuck. They are intentionally manipulating you to keep you in that relationship. So if you feel like you're here, pay attention. Pay attention to any progress that has been made. If there's future faking going on, there's going to be little to no progress. It's just going to be a whole bunch of empty promises. So the third way that a narcissist will keep you stuck is through guilt tripping. And this could be guilt over a variety of things. You might feel guilt because you have a family together, because you're married and you have that obligation, because you committed yourself to this relationship and to this person. And walking away, it's a big deal for you. And a narcissist may use this against you. They're likely to remind you of the obligation that you're already feeling, and they'll do this in order to keep you stuck. Now, some people also feel guilt because they feel like they have to help this narcissistic person. They feel responsible for this person. This person is clearly an adult child. They don't know how to regulate their emotions. They don't know how to handle their emotions, and they don't really have empathy. Unfortunately, these people are severely lacking in a lot of the things that are really necessary for human connection. So if you're feeling stuck in a toxic relationship with a narcissist, there's a chance that you might feel responsible for the narcissist. You might feel responsible for their happiness. And part of that could be because of manipulation, because they've made you feel responsible for their happiness. And part of it may be that you recognize some of what's going on there and you feel like you can help them. But if you're feeling stuck in this way, if guilt is really eating away at you, understand that you cannot help anyone else who doesn't want to help themselves. And when it comes to the situational guilt of having a marriage and or a family with somebody who is highly narcissistic, there's a lot more involved there. So of course, it's important to consider all aspects of your decision before you make it. This isn't one to take lightly. But if you are feeling stuck because of guilt, try to take a step back and evaluate what's really going on here and try to make sure that it's all coming from you and that the decisions you're making are in your best interest and the best interests of the people who you truly love and who are not abusive to you. So the next way a narcissist will keep you stuck is through hoovering. And I have to tell you, I have a lot of experience with hoovering, and it is absolutely what kept me stuck in this abusive relationship. Because there were plenty of times when I was just done. There were discards, and then there were times that I discarded. It was a lot of back and forth. It was very much an emotional roller coaster relationship. But when a narcissist hoovers, what they're doing usually is re-idealizing you. So there goes that love bombing all over again. And it feels sincere, it really does. Because they're re-idealizing you, there is a certain amount of sincerity to it. Now, from my experience, I can tell you they're also future faking, and they're also most likely lying through their teeth. But there is some genuine feeling behind it. And that's what's tricky. That's what makes it feel so real. That's what makes it seem believable. And when a narcissist is hoovering, they want you to forget everything that's happened in the past. They want you to absolutely pretend like it's never happened and give them yet another clean slate. And they're not focused on the past because really they know what they've done. And if you are feeling stuck, if you're in that situation where a narcissist is coming back and trying to hoover you again, I'm going to link to a couple of videos that I suggest you watch, because those videos cover why a narcissist hoovers, and they help you get a better understanding of what's going on there and how predictable it really is. The narcissist wants you to think that this is a unique situation and that you have a unique relationship that nobody could possibly understand. I promise you, if you start hearing about other people's stories, if you start learning about hoovering, you'll quickly see that there's nothing unique about it at all. It's actually very run-of-the-mill narcissistic behavior. And once you know that, it's a lot easier to get unstuck from it. So another way that a narcissist will keep you stuck is through gaslighting and confusion. Now, when you've been in a relationship with a narcissist where gaslighting is present, and it almost always is, it's not unusual to start doubting yourself and to start doubting whether you're the problem, whether if you didn't act a certain way, the other person wouldn't act the way they did. And while it's true that we all impact each other in various ways, there's never an excuse for someone to act in a way that's abusive. So if you think that gaslighting is present in your relationship, I usually recommend keeping a journal, because that can help you kind of reality check and to really see what's going on, because oftentimes time can skew things. And when you have somebody telling you the opposite of what you've experienced and maybe even what you've seen with your own eyes, things can get very confusing. So keeping a journal can help with that. Okay, so here we are at number 6, and this is hands down the narcissist's number 1 manipulation tool, and that is intermittent reinforcement. This is what creates the trauma bond. This is that feeling of love, those feel-good chemicals that are surging through your brain when you feel like you're in love, when you're falling in love with someone. And that's not the bad part of it. That's actually the good part of it. This happens whenever anyone falls in love. But where things go wrong in a toxic relationship is when that person who you love traumatizes you over and over again. When that person you love becomes emotionally abusive, things get very confusing. Narcissists use intermittent reinforcement as a way to keep you in their web, to keep you stuck exactly where you are. And they know exactly how to do it. They know exactly how to keep you stuck. Now, to explain intermittent reinforcement and how it works, I want to tell you about this study they did in the 1950s. So researchers had rats press a lever to get a food pellet. And they found that whenever the rats were hungry, they would press the lever, get a food pellet. When researchers took away the food pellet, the rats quickly adjusted. They stopped pressing the lever because it wasn't getting them anything. But what was really interesting about this experiment is that when it became unpredictable, when the rats would sometimes press the lever and get pellets and sometimes not, researchers found that the rats became obsessive about pressing this lever. In fact, they stopped all other grooming habits and they just completely obsessed over this lever. It created something akin to an addiction in the rats. And if you think about it, a similar thing happens when you're at the slot machines. If you're like me and you never win, you're not going to keep pulling that lever. But if sometimes you win and sometimes you don't, sometimes it's a big win, sometimes it's a small win, and most of the time it's no win at all, you're gonna keep gambling. And that's exactly what a relationship with a narcissist is like. You keep hoping for that reinforcement. You keep hoping for the good times. You're reaching back and thinking about the love bombing and how good that felt. And then you remember that there were times when the re-idealization came around and you felt close to that again. There were good times. If there weren't good times, you wouldn't press the lever. You wouldn't go back. And this is a big part of what keeps us stuck in that toxic hope. We hope for the future that's promised, the carrot that's dangling in front of us, because we know that there's good in there. We've seen it. The relationship has some good times. There are good moments. And it's why we believe all the promises when this person comes back around hoovering. It's also a big part of why it works when somebody's gaslighting you to think that you're the problem, that you're the reason why they acted a certain way. Because you remember the good times and you want to remember the good times, there's always that hope. And that hope is exactly what keeps you stuck. When all is said and done, it's truly that intermittent reinforcement that will keep you stuck. So now that we've identified the elephant in the room, how do you get unstuck from that? I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy. It's certainly not. But identifying it and understanding what's going on there is really the first step to moving forward. And if you can identify that this intermittent reinforcement is present in your life, it's time to have some serious conversations about how you're going to proceed. It's true that intermittent reinforcement can be present when somebody is not a narcissist. It can be present when somebody actually has good intentions, but bad and toxic habits. But if this is true, that person will be willing and open to change and work on themselves. But if you're feeling like you're stuck in the same loop, and you're not getting anywhere and you're spinning your wheels, that's when you need to think about doing what is best for you, whatever that is. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please go ahead and hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more like it, subscribe, and I'll see you next week.